just so that way I have extra notes that in case there's something I forget. But hello, everybody, all 5 of us. My name is Elena Guerra, and I am one of the 2 patient technology specialists here at Methodist Children's Hospital in San Antonio. And today, for my knowledge share, I will be talking about thinking outside your normal gaming toolkit. So yeah, let's move on to the next slide. Hello? Okay. Nope. There we go. So the overview of this panel is when we think outside of the box with games we usually offer, it can lead to more impactful experience for the patient. By staying up to date with some gaming trends outside our usual comfort zone, we can also reach more patients to help with their stays. So basically what I'm going to be talking about is we usually, as patient technology specialists or gaming tech specialists, we have a set of games that are like our go-to games to interact with patients. They're ones that can transcend age. They're ones that are relevant or easily accessible for others to be able to play. And those games a lot of the times can look like things like Mario Kart, Minecraft, Fortnite, any of the sports games. But a lot of times, especially with our longer term patients, I found that there can only be so much of an interaction or so much of a relationship that can be built with these patients. And what I mean by that is there's only so much of like a meaningful relationship we can build or stay we can build with that patient. And so when we build rapport over time with patients, we're able to help validate like their likes. I'm sorry, guys. I get very nervous during presentations, so it's going to be a little choppy.
You're great.
But so when we're able to actually build like good rapport with our patients, we're able to have meaningful conversations that help them in their day-to-day lives. So that's them opening up to us and talking about school or fears in the future, or asking, questions about like, how do I handle this thing? How do I handle that? Where I found the best way to often lead to interactions like that have been from asking them what they like within from the first session once they're comfortable talking to us. So a lot of the times that looks like while we're playing Mario Kart as the intro, they're having fun, they're playing, their guards are a little more down, or playing Minecraft or Fortnite, asking them what their favorite movies are, what their favorite TikTok sounds are, and stuff like that. Like if they like video games or cartoons and stuff. And so usually interactions with kids when we start off with games like Mario Kart, Minecraft, Fortnite, sports, I usually will use those games for patients who have shorter stays, unless they prompt otherwise. But usually with those interactions, specifically with games like this, it's just very surface level. A lot of it is very surface level. And so in my personal experience, when I've brought in games that are like I've gone off on a limb and they're longer term patients or they're harder to reach patients, I will usually throw out indie or cozy games for patients to be able to maybe play. So the first game that I experienced this with in regards to building a deeper connection or a more meaningful connection with the patient was Beyond Blue, where patient was very selective in who they communicated with. And it is a single player game. However, during that gameplay, we were able to develop means of communication with each other. When he didn't want to talk to anybody else, we were able to have him relax more during his session. And it eventually led to us building a relationship where he relaxed even more, to the point where later on when we wanted to play games or we wanted to do stuff, he would let me help him with things that his mother would say, like, hey, like, he doesn't let anybody help him out of his wheelchair. He doesn't let anybody walk around with him like this, like stuff like that. So Then there's games like Stardew Valley, which when I first came into the hospital setting, I had asked if we used, and Alexander's opinion at the time was just like, I don't really see kids being into it, and I don't know enough too much about the game. So what I did is I was insistent because I was like, it's cozy. It has a lot of like routine building exercise or like routine building within the game. So the way I use Stardew Valley when I play with patients is if it's like a long-term patient who has interest in it or just wants to sit and hang out or talk, that's how I'll use Stardew Valley. With Stardew Valley, I've been able to use it with our HEMONC patients, but also with short-term patients. Sometimes they have prior knowledge to what the game is and they really like it, or they've wanted to try it out. So we provide that means of being able to be like, hey, like, here's this game. I'll show you how to do everything in it. And we have a very more chill session where usually patients will open up or they'll want to talk about their day-to-day life, fears that they have for the future. So while playing, I had a routine with one patient where we would play Stardew Valley, and after a little bit of sitting either quietly or catching up, she would just kind of disclose like, this is what I'm scared about leaving with the hospital, or this is what I'm afraid of, or hey, it kind of sucks that I'm leaving because then that means we don't get to see you again. Because you build that relationship with that patient when you're playing like more chill games or cozy games. Just Dance has been another one where it's not always the go-to for patients, but I've been able to use it to get patients either smiling or exercising, regardless of whether or not they think it's exercising, and having fun just moving around, which is sometimes when you have those kids who just are stubborn, don't want to do anything with rehab, don't want to do anything with OT, OTPT. It's really helpful to present it as like here's a game to do this. Once again, sorry guys. Another game I've had a ton of help, or I've had success with being like, okay, this kid doesn't like Mario Kart, this kid doesn't like Minecraft, they don't like Fortnite, is Genshin Impact. So, and that's usually sitting down with the patient to be like, hey, what kind of games do you like? And if they say they don't really play video games, but they like Genshin Impact, there's a lot to be done with sit down and discuss, like, you know, if they like anime or whatever pop culture things that they like. Another way I've been able to make more headway and validate the patient's likes have been horror games, unfortunately, which is why you see the dad from freaking Resident Evil 7 at the bottom on the screen. And with that, it's, even though I don't like horror games, there's a lot of kids today. There's a lot of patients who come in and they on the daily are watching horror games, watching horror movies as lullabies. And even though it scares the living crap out of me, as long as it's age appropriate and with parental permission, sitting down to play a horror game it goes a long way with patients in regards to just validating their likes and showing that you're willing to get to know them by putting yourself in a kind of uncomfortable position. And so what that means is just for like longer term stays, it helps them trust you, and it will help with their communication in regards to how they're feeling in the hospital, what's going on. And you get to use video games in order to do that. So things to keep in mind is when we are looking at games outside of our normal kit, so games outside of Minecraft, Smash Bros, Fortnite, any of the sports games, COD, etc. When we're looking at cozy games, not all of them are always appropriate for the hospital setting, and discovery does take time. So if you aren't already looking at like Nintendo Directs Wholesome Games Directs, etc. Start paying attention to those, because sometimes there are gems of indie or cozy games that you are able to keep in your Switch for those kids that are a little harder to reach, where if you have a kid who isn't interested in any of the games, but they like slime and they like cats, having a game like Slime Rancher is always really great to have on hand. But of those games by taking time out of your own schedules to make sure to put in the effort to look for those things. And another thing to keep in mind is just because a game is comfy and cozy does not mean it is always appropriate. So we have games like Spiritfarer, and while though it has super wonderful mini games, it has beautiful messages, it is a game revolving death. Like the main theme is death, and you are literally ferrying people over into the next world. So not always the most appropriate within our scope. Unique play style. It has a very unique play style, and it has a really fun story. However, all the themes also involve death, and there are some darker themes in regards to death. Like some are comical, while others are not. Still not appropriate for hospital settings, but it's doing that research and putting that time in to look at those games and be like, maybe this is not within my scope. However, if your hospital has somebody like a play therapist or like a child psychiatrist who enjoys utilizing play or like video games to discuss harder themes, then these games like Spiritfarer or Sea of Solitude, Gris, and a couple of others are perfect for them, but not necessarily for us. And then another thing to keep in mind when we are using like our indie or cozy games or games that we might not usually use, just check in with the patient, because sometimes I think for us as like we love video games, we love playing video games and showing off things that we love. So for me, it's games like Stardew Valley and showing off Stardew Valley to new patients. And where I'm having the time of my life because I love that game, sometimes the patient might not be having as good of a time. So it's stopping to look and check in with the patient to be like, hey, are you okay? Or hey, like what's going on? If you don't want to play this, we don't have to play this anymore. Because especially when it is in the case of your longer term patients or your patients that you've built a lot of rapport with, they will do things for you despite the fact that like they don't want to, not despite, but like they're being nice, right? So even though Stardew Valley they're kind of like, meh, we can play, but they know that we love it, they'll say yes, which is, I mean, that's really wonderful, but we're there for them, we're not there for us. So just keeping in mind to check in with your patients when you're trying out these games, because it's really important that like we keep in mind that they are the most important thing of the session. Individual, goal. So where do we find games that will help with expanding our toolkits as patient tech specialists? Wholesome Games Direct is a really, really great one. They do a good job of breaking down upcoming indie and cozy and comfy games. So a lot of the times you'll be able to see themes that might be good or may not be good for bringing into the hospital setting or keeping, just on a Switch or like Game Pass. Same with Indie World Direct, Xbox Game Pass, going through Xbox Game Pass. They're adding so many wonderful little games each month or every so often. Each month, so going through, browsing the catalog, seeing either an art style or a description that catches you, going to YouTube and seeing, if the themes might be appropriate for your hospital setting or if the mechanics might be really fun. And then there's things like social media and staying up to date. I know not everybody has TikTok, but I really, really highly suggest having TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube, just so that way it makes it easier to discover what kids are talking about in regards to keeping up with memes, knowing what they like. But it's also a lot easier sometimes to curate your For You page to only be able to see news about indie games or games coming up. Twitter, especially following like Wholesome Games Direct or Indie World or various influencers who compile lists and break down indie games are always really good to follow. And then YouTube or to follow, because then you start hearing like the whispers, or you start seeing the tweets and retweets about certain games coming up, and you're able to decide, like, I have a patient that, you know, might really, really like this, or if a patient like this patient comes back, then I think they would enjoy this. And YouTube as well, just YouTube to when watching things like Nintendo Directs, Indie World Directs, etc., for discovering them. Anyway, that's my presentation. My name is Elena. I apologize if it was kind of a cluster. Don't ask me any questions. I'll cry. But thank you guys. That is it.
No questions?
None of them. Please don't even look at me.
Can we ask you in Slack later?
Yeah, you guys can ask questions. It is 100% a joke. But I apologize ahead of time if in the middle it was definitely a little choppy, for sure. Okay.
You might want to back over to the presentation, just because otherwise we're getting the infinite mirror.
Hold on. I've tried.
Oh,
there we go. Yeah. I was clicking the buttons for it. So, but thank you guys for showing up.
Yeah. Do you I was just thinking, because you are so in tune with the different new ideas of games. Can you? I don't want to like. I don't know if a list is the right thing. Like throw some in Slack every once in a while of new ones that you find.
Yeah, I can do that. Would you just want it in like the patient tech chat, or maybe like resources, or
just in games maybe? I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know, or yeah, probably just in games. I mean, they are games that you would be finding.
Yeah.
I was thinking not everyone. It would be great if more people were hunting around like you, but not everyone probably has the time or wants to do that. So having you do that would be great. Or other people want to do it.
Yeah, I can do that. I know at one point, I can't remember I think it might have been Forrest at one point who asked for games that had like deeper meaning, that they could pass off to, I don't know if it was Garrett or if it was, no, not Garrett, sorry, Forrest, or if it was somebody else, but there was like an asking for like, hey, like cozy games that have deeper meanings, so that way our blank, whatever facility member or like faculty member could use to be able to go through like these hard themes. And I was able to be like, hey, like this game, super awesome, like these ones. But also I seek out these games because I like games that make me cry and make me feel things. And so that's partially why I'm just like, okay, maybe not these games. I think part of it, I don't know, also to keep in mind is like, I think a lot of the times we can get away from thinking how kids think, or like keeping in mind how kids' brains work. And so if we just keep that in mind for our sessions, then it helps with being able to get them to open up and talk and actually enjoy the play more, and forget that they're in a hospital setting. But that is my presentation.
Do you have a favorite game to introduce to kids? Like one that you find they gravitate towards, or that you get excited that they get excited about?
Stardew Valley. I love Stardew Valley just because there's one, the whole thing was made by one dude. The music is beautiful. He didn't expect it to be as big of a phenomenon as it is. And it has like so many really fun like mini games. So it's got some kind of like little bit of monster hunting. It has mining, it has farming, it has romance, it has, you know, all these little tidbits, and each of the characters are so well developed. And it really shows you that like putting in the effort into people can be fruitful, because regardless of whether or not you're romancing somebody, there is some kind of cutscene for character development, or for learning, why is a character like this? Why does it not do this? so there's that game, and then the other one, and I've only been able to get one kid to freaking play it, is Undertale, and that is in particular just because like it literally flips the mechanics that we all have ingrained in us in regards to RPGs or any kind of game where it's like, okay, there are monsters, I have to fight it, let's to progress. But then as you progress within the game and the game becomes more warped or more like things don't start, like monsters start disappearing, things don't start showing up, it's because you were supposed to try and go and be like show mercy and do a pacifist route. And so it's teaching kids that like you don't have to fight everything all the time. You can, like, if there are other solutions to just fighting, like if you talk things out with individuals, it can lead to better conversations or better outcomes. So those are like my two. Like I said, Undertale, I've only been able to get one kid to do it, and that's because she already knew about it. And I was like, I have it here on my Xbox. I will help you play it if you want, sort of thing. So, but those are my two. Ones I'd eventually love to be able to incorporate more are like ones like Ooblets, where it's really cute because it's teaching kids strategy, but also it's like they're dance battles. You're not even with like little animals. So you've got like the Pokemon regard where you're collecting things and you're growing things. You're learning the strategy and how creatures fight, but it's all like this stinky, like it's very silly, like little dance battle with these little monsters, which is really fun. So
with Stardew, do you have a world that you know you sort of start them in that world that's already evolved and already or do you start sort of fresh with each patient? Or
I usually will start fresh with each patient, so that way they can learn the mechanics ahead of time. Stardew, when it initially came out, was garbage about tutorials, and it was like not good about having any kind of like way to teach you. It just threw you into the game. So now I will usually almost always play on the Switch, and I'll teach them the Switch mechanics of it. And the only thing I will ever tell kids that they never ever have to do in the game again is the fishing, because even adults have a lot of trouble with the fishing mechanic in that game. I love fishing mini games, so I just gravitate towards those, or once I get to them in the game, I'm like, this is it. This is where I live now. And so I'd love if it wasn't also like Animal Crossing kind of way where it was an easy like pick up and it had save files. The new Disney Dreamlight Valley, I just started playing it last night, and a lot of the mechanics, but also kids being able to see like their favorite Disney characters and interact with them, and it gives them tasks. I would love for it to have save slots, but right now it's just one kind of like continuous game. But for Stardew, it's just showing them the mechanics and being like, okay, now you can do whatever you want. Just make sure we go to bed by this time, and make sure you don't run out of energy. And I've played with a kid like as young as like 7 years old, and he did pretty well with it when we finally were able to like progress through it.
Cool.
Yes.
I was gonna say, do you want to touch on how you do the single player games with patients?
Yeah. So usually when it's a single player kind of game, I will sit back, and a lot of the times it's a game I've already played through. So I know the mechanics, I know where I can step in, and I know how to be like, hey, like maybe we should do this. Or like, oh, if you want to do this, just know that this is going to happen. But usually I'll start them off at the beginning, because usually most of the times when we play games, that's the easiest part to start off in. It's a lot harder, like with Slime Rancher, if I already have a ranch all built out and they don't know how to combat like certain slimes by throwing stuff at them. But usually it's just starting off at the beginning and saying like, hey, if you need help with anything, there is a tutorial. If you want to skip the tutorial, I'll just tell you how to play, and stepping in when they ask. But for the most part, it's trying also not to overload them with too much information, because sometimes we all know that games can get a little, what's it called? They get a little crazy with the tutorials, or like throwing a lot of information at you.
Mm-hmm.
Where I think it's our job to help with simplifying what's going on. hopefully that answered the question. Okay. I know I did a very, very fast presentation. So
No, that's okay.
now only
not
12.
everything has to be like. There's nothing magic about an hour. It doesn't have to. Be, you know.
Well, I was looking up everybody else's and they were like 40 minutes to an hour, and I was like, "Ooh, we're gonna try, but
No,
once I
it's
get into
fine.
presentation, I get a little fast."
It's all good. It's all good. Other questions about different games? Or I was thinking having I think maybe Connor has shared it before, the link to the Cozy Games site, but like having links to those places might be good. If you want to send them to me, I can put them with the video when I upload it, or put them in Slack or whatever.
Yeah.
That might be helpful.
Okay, I can do that. I can send it. But yeah. Ocean game. Oh, Beyond Blue. Beyond Blue is really good. Beyond Blue is just I've explained it. I know I talked more to some of the patient techs about it, and I talked about it a little bit at the conclave. But hello. I talked a little bit more about it at the conclave, but Beyond Blue is a super great resource for like kids who just want to hang out with you and they want to watch you play a game instead during your time, because that game is both educational and super beautiful, and you don't have to worry about jump scares in any way, because each of the levels is a different depth of the ocean, and then they show you different sea creatures that would live in that area. But that game, I think, is a super great resource specifically for like a kid who's like, I'm not feeling great, I just want to hang out, I don't really want to watch anime, I don't really want to do this. So, but yeah, that's that one game.
Is it on Game Pass? No.
No, I think it is on the PS4.
I mean, it's on Xbox, but I didn't know if it was on Game Pass or not.
Let's see.
It's on like everything.
Yeah, I think there was one. I would love for the game to come to. It is on Apple Arcade, which that's my next thing I want to eventually get us all to like push for, because of how many games you can get that are like ad free. And there's literally so many puzzle games, cozy games, little action games. And since a lot of us work with iPads, specifically like in our hospitals, or if we're iPad only hospitals, I think it's like a really good resource to have. It is unfortunately a subscription. But like you have games like Sayonara Wild Hearts or like Florence, that's really fun. Florence is like an up and down. It's meant to be played as a mobile game. It's got some sad elements, but it's not too sad. And then the element at the end is like that you find yourself basically. And so it's beautiful. But it has, with most Annapurna games, it has really unique puzzles and ways of storytelling. Yes.
You talked about it a little bit with building rapport, but I also know we give you kiddos who like don't want to play games really, and then by the end of their stay, like they go from like, I don't like games that much, you got them playing, super obsessed with games. And a lot of that comes from you building that initial rapport by finding something else in common with them.
Mm-hmm.
But do you want to touch on any of that?
So one of the things that I usually will do when I go in, and I know I must sound obnoxious when I initially go into a room, like I'll sit down, I'll let us both get comfy after I've set up the game. I let the kid pick the game that we play. So usually it is starting off with things like our initial toolkit. So like it's starting off with Fortnite, it's starting off with Mario Kart or Minecraft, any of those things. And as we're playing, then asking questions, like I had taught, like I said, like Alexander said, touched up on it a little bit, where it was like, what TikToks do they like? Or specifically for TikTok, it's what TikTok sound do they like? Because TikTok, if you guys don't have it, it kind of, two people could be on TikTok and never see the same video. because of the way the algorithm works. But they could hear the same sound or like pieces of audios that are used throughout the TikToks to set up punchlines, memes, relatable content. So usually one of my go-to questions for kids is what their favorite sound is. And then if I know the sound, I'll usually end up finishing it with them. And so they're like, oh, this person knows what I'm talking about, or like they know what's going on. And then I'll explain which one at the time is my favorite one. Also, when asking about like what their favorite movies are or cartoons, or I'll usually ask those. And if I've seen it, I'll ask things that they thought about the movie or ask them to talk about it. Because then it's not me doing all the talking, it's the kid getting to do the talking and making sure to hone in and ask questions about what they're saying. Because I think it's just more important, like as a kid, to validate what they're talking about, or what, because especially when you grow up in like a world full of adults and we get kids who are more fearful or anxious, etc., it's important to let them know that they are heard and they are listened to. And so that usually is how I'm able to help with that, is just making sure to sit there and like continuously be like, if I was a kid or like if I was in this situation, how would I feel? Because then I think it just helps me be a little more mindful to connect with the kid. I hope that answered that.
Yeah.
Have you ever reached out to the Beyond Blue people to see if they'll give us codes? If not,
No, no, I haven't. They do follow me on Instagram, but I don't know if I could be like, I mean, I could.
if you want, I'm happy to as well.
I can. I think they would appreciate knowing in what ways we've been able to. I think that like as we continue to, this could be like a whole other topic of conversation, grow as an industry. I think the gaming industry in general is not hyper aware of what we do, and so they don't understand in what ways their games are being utilized, or how we're learning to find games to incorporate into the hospital setting to normalize the hospital stay and help kids feel validated in what they like. And so I think I will, so yes, I'll do that, but I think they would love to know, like, hey, like this is how your game is being used, this is how helpful it is. You should definitely make it for VR maybe, and make it to where we can't get sick from it or something like that.
I mean, Subnautica is VR.
That has jump scares.
No, I'm just saying you could. Okay. There are games where you're underwater without getting sick. In VR, so.
I was like, no, yeah, I know that game has Mondo jump scares.
No. Yeah, I'm not saying necessarily. I mean, certain age that'd be great, but but there are underwater games in VR that without getting sick for most people. So
the Reef one, or right, Alexander, the Reef VR game, or
there's Ocean Rift and
Ocean Rift. VR. Sorry.
Yeah, I would love the Blue VR to make more Blue VR, but I don't know where WeVR is, what they're doing right now.
Yeah, I think that was made just more as a demo. Yeah,
it is called the Blue VR Volume 1.
Mm-hmm.
They called it Volume 1, and I'm like, what does that mean?
Maybe they intended to do more.
If there's not multiple volumes, why call it Volume 1?
That's their art. They just,
Yeah, it's art.
Cool. Any other questions?
It's okay if there's not.
It is okay. Cool. Thank you, Elena. That was great.
Of course. You don't have to be nice and say it was great, because I know it wasn't.
It's good.
It was good timing. I know I came in late. I'm sorry, but it actually like lined up perfectly with the conversation that my group was having this morning on stream, with just what games are out there that we want to introduce to kids that they haven't played yet, or what. And so that's why I was kind of interested in your answer and the games that you were presenting. So.
Thank you. I'm glad that it happened to align right. there was a couple at PAX West that I think were really, really fun to look at. Like one of them, it's just a silly game, silly, goofy game, but it's that jelly card game. Did you guys see it? It's very much like Little Big Planet-esque, where it's like a platformer, but like it's just a car. There's not much to it, but it's just a little car, and it's got like human fall flat kind of mechanics where like as it goes into things, it gets squished. It doesn't get like crushed. So it's just a car that you're trying to get to the end of this platform thing, but it's goofy and it's silly, and I think it would be really fun for kids to play, especially if they're stuck in like pre-op, because that's one of those, it's levels, it doesn't have a whole story kind of game. But I know Connor has said he's used like Garden Story to play with kids, which I'd love to hear more about that one because that game's so freaking cute. But yeah, there definitely is like a fine line in regards to like indie cozy games, or games we don't usually use, and it being a thing where we should be making the time to either do research on the game or look or play the game ourselves to just make sure it doesn't cross that line over into like, ooh, this is out of my scope, or like, ooh, maybe we shouldn't show the cancer patient this game about cancer, somebody dying from cancer or something like that. For sure.
Freaking Thor got us that way.
Yeah. We were part of what is it? Disney. It's like a program Starlight runs where we get some movies ahead of time. Yeah, but Thor: Love and Thunder does deal with like major cancer themes, and so it wasn't until one of the, which I didn't know because I did not look up any spoilers or anything for the movie, but it was a mom coming up to Alexander being like, from the HEMONC floor, being like, maybe we don't show this movie to our HEMONC kids, huh? And it being like, oh, well, okay, let's take that one off for a little bit.
That's good to know. Yeah. Not every Disney is appropriate for everyone.
And every kid wants to see the new Thor. Like the Marvel kids and the HEMONC kids are here forever. But I hadn't seen the movie myself yet. But I was like, it's the new Thor. It doesn't like, it's fine. And then it was a new diagnosis mom who was like, hey. And I was like, that's a good point. I'd had several other long-term diagnosis kiddos, didn't say a word to me. But I was like, yeah, you're right. At the very least, we'll warn you guys ahead of time.
Yeah. It's all like how it hits with every family is different. It's weird. I mean, not weird, it's natural, but it's just
All right. Turning off recording.
Woo!